talk about reparations. We pay reparations. What do you mean you want reparations?
Y'all stay with
Our
me.
taxpayer dollars, which are mostly white people paying that, goes to, affordable housing, government programs, EBT, scholarships, DEI, you guys getting jobs. Holy shit. Let's take all that, factor in the theft, factor in the crime, factor it in the murders, and then we'll talk about reparations on this show. How about that? You probably won't like that, will you? Because you're not going to like the numbers. But we are all, frankly, exhausted.
Okay, so let's start here. Your entire rant was rooted in racist stereotypes, emotional talking points, and misinformation, not facts. Because saying Black Americans already receive reparations through EBT, affordable housing, DEI, scholarships, and government programs is not only racially offensive, it's intellectually dishonest. But honestly, I'm not even surprised. Because at its core, racism is born of ignorance. An ignorance of history, an ignorance of systems, an ignorance of the very advantages people mistake for superiority. And in your ignorance, you actually seem proud while repeating those talking points. Like putting Black people down somehow gives you this strange sense of superiority. But I'm not here to protect your comfort, because what you completely ignored is who those programs primarily benefit and why many of them were created in the first place. You also simply skipped over that for some of those programs, Black people weren't even eligible when they were created. White Americans make up the largest raw number of recipients in those very programs that you mentioned. Those programs were not created exclusively for Black people. They were created for Americans. But you painted them like some secret pipeline of wealth flowing only to Black communities. Meanwhile, if we're actually following the money, your community still overwhelmingly holds the largest share of wealth, land ownership, inherited assets, corporate control, and political influence in this country. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because your ancestors were allowed to build wealth uninterrupted for generations. Through land ownership, subsidized home ownership, business access, voting rights, legal protections, and government-backed opportunities. While Black Americans, on the other hand, were enslaved, then segregated, then redlined, and then excluded from loans, neighborhoods, schools, contracts, and wealth-building opportunities by law and policy. So no, history didn't just magically disappear because the calendar changed. And DEI is not some magical free Black jobs program either. DEI exists because this country actually spent generations excluding qualified people from jobs, universities, housing, contracts, and opportunities based on race and gender alone. Ironically, you white women have statistically benefited from diversity and affirmative action efforts more than any other group in this country. But suddenly, when Black Americans benefit just a little bit from inclusion, people like you call it unfair. Many of you actually vote against your own interests just to preserve your entitlement to privilege, but then claim that privilege doesn't exist. Interesting, isn't it? And where were voices like yours when Black veterans came home from serving this country, only to be denied many of the same housing and educational opportunities that helped build the white middle class? Where were you when banks literally drew red lines around Black neighborhoods and denied loans to qualified Black families? Where were you when Black Americans were legally locked out of competition altogether? You see, while your parents and your grandparents were often free to build wealth, buy property, move wherever they wanted, and accumulate security, many Black families were surviving Jim Crow, racial terror, voter suppression, and legalized discrimination. And yes, those systems were strongly enforced under American law. Now let's address your crime narrative, because every time any subject about race or black people comes up, someone tries to weaponize crime statistics while ignoring the very conditions that produce crime in the first place. We all know that poverty and crime correlate across every racial group. When communities are historically underfunded, segregated, denied investment, over-policed, and blocked from wealth-building opportunities for generations, social outcomes suffer. That is not a black defect. That is what inequality produces. And finally, your stupid idea that only white people pay for America is one of the most arrogant, historically ignorant narratives imaginable. Black Americans work. We pay taxes. We serve in the military. And we build businesses. We also contribute to Social Security, Medicare, payroll taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, and federal taxes, just like every other citizen. But you already know that. So this conversation is not about begging anyone for anything. It's about whether America is mature enough to honestly confront the long-term damage created by its own policies, instead of hiding behind foolish stereotypes every time accountability enters the room. That is the real conversation. Let me know when you're ready to have it.